Welcome to the Andy Noise Experience, podcast, Endurance Noise, Random Musings. It's Wednesday, 8/19/2020. Who knows what day it is with this whole COVID and all that. And who do I have here in his garage, it looks like?
Zachary Griffin, a.k.a. Zach Griffin. It's great to be here, Andy. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, I've been looking forward. I had Nate Berg on the other day, music, and this kind of podcast, I kind of talked to a lot of my running ultra world friends, but you're also an endurance athlete. I see you out there. We wave at each other many times. I often say that me and you are kind of similar. I'm like the guy that a lot of people know in Bakersfield for the walking, running, and you're the bike guy. And you are literally are the bike guy. That's still one of your jobs, right?
You know what? Actually, it's not. I'm a student, so I gave up on. We can delve into that a bit, but I have pursued that as a paid profession for many years, and then it's been obviously something as an advocate that I've done.
Yes.
After I left Bike Bakersfield, I worked with our local advocacy group, Bike Bakersfield, and I do have to say I credit Councilman Smith for sort of opening my eyes to sort of the civil engineering side. I think there's always a method to every madness, and sort of the beautiful art of learning anything is learning that method, and so anyway, that said, I love it that I get to be the bike guy because, for years you're where you're the music guy or the record guy or.
Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to say something and we can dovetail into this, but I used you as an example the other day. I've been really blessed to have been able to take this course over the summer on, it's an advocacy course. So it's, how do you change if you had, you want to have a curb and gutter installation or something along your neighborhood that you want to change, and how do you go about making those changes and building, but we were talking, and this is put on by America Walks. And so over the course of obviously the summer, end of spring and summer, equity has been a very major issue on everyone's plate. And so we were talking about, and so this class will do these Zoom meetings, right? And we have guys and gals from Buffalo, from New Mexico, from New Jersey, California, Bakersfield, LA, Sacramento, Indiana, and they're planners, healthcare workers. Guy in Santa Clarita just works for the trail system, trimming bushes, as he says. And so we were listening to a lot of our discussions and how it's hard to get these larger programs, say how to get people to use a path or how to get people to use the bike share program. And so in listening, I was listening to a younger guy from New Jersey tell a story of, and it kind of resonated with me and my same experiences that I've had in teaching bicycle education and walking education in schools. Is he was saying how we would define what a walker is to certain ages, and you use the word pedestrian for certain older kids, and so the humor in the fact that people don't identify as a walker.
It's a topic on this podcast a lot.
So this thing is that to me, it really hit me in the sense that we really are. I love bikes, and I'm glad I'm the bike guy. But I really do feel that bikes are the cart before the horse. If you cannot learn and seeing young people being able to identify as a walker and recognize that that's their basic, learning the spatial, the normal, spatial distance, social spatial distancing that are really important right now. When it comes to walking and how to do so safely and how to deal with the environment around you, how to bring water, what do you do, what kind of clothes to wear, all these things that you learn naturally over 3 generations have been lost. People don't do that anymore.
No.
So I thought of you, and to me, it's as much as I love the bike, I have to say, Andy, I really truly have to say, all of that is you do, and the running community in Bakersfield here, I think, is really underrepresented, underappreciated, and overlooked, because realistically, that's how we're going to meet with these kids. You can't expect a young person to come out and buy a $4,000 bike, or even and it's going to cost you $1,000. That's not BS. It's going to cost you $1,000 to get a bike that a kid can beat on enough that he won't have to call mom and dad every day. So anyway, I wanted to say that. Sorry to take a little bit of time, but I did my hats off to all the walking and running people, and I hope to in the future as an advocate be able to take you know, my goal here is to get my multi-subject credential and get back into education, which is where I believe I can make the most effect on getting active transportation and the positives that we all know come out of that. So,
because I know you used to be working with the kids in school and stuff in the past. And
I used to hustle a lot just to try to write big grants that I would eventually just get beat up with by the funders. You know, so I realized that getting my teaching credentials was probably a little smarter, and then I could come in as an educator and have the union to help me. And then, you know, you can support that through your class and stuff. So that said, I think that, you know, integrating, and I think the successes that we're going to find, if we're going to find successes here in our valley that is absolutely in need of those connections to change the progress moving forward, is to be able to make that path from walking to running to then using biking, busing, walking as an everyday part of their lives. Because I think that trying to get e-bikes on the bike path, you know, albeit a wonderful, neat thing, adds more enforcement issues, training issues, lethargy issues, cost issues, gentrification issues. And so anywho. So that segues to something that I posted the other day, and if you don't mind, I could share that with you.
Yeah, you were talking about that's kind of one of the things I wanted to hit up was what is that extension, right? Well, yeah, you go on. I just briefly saw some of it. So what's going on with that?
Well, you guys, I see you, of course, you and I pass primarily on, for those who don't live here in Kern County, the myriads of millions out there of fans that are watching. We have a really wonderful amenity called the Kern River Parkway that we all get to walk and ride on, and helped establish in 1973 by Bill Cooper and Rich O'Neill, and wonderful amenity. And so that path, however, runs sort of dead ends in an area, and it really crosses an extremely high speed, complicated intersection. If I'm not mistaken, you have four mergings. So you have a left hand or right hand, depending upon the direction you're going off the main road. And then you have two merging lanes, and then you have two splitting lanes. So it's actually six. That said, it is something that has seen a high morbidity rate. We lost 4 people. And to those that are runners here in Kern, John Roos was the most probably prominent, longtime resident. He and my uncle actually graduated high school together and went to high school together. John was a wonderful guy, was a local runner, father of the Pie Run. He was hit, and 3 others, and killed, all within roughly, I want to say 9 months. So that said, it's an area that needs improvement. And so afterwards, what the county decided, and I understand that the family of the people who lost their lives probably didn't want to pursue this. It's already tragic enough to have your life, you know, your loved one's life taken from you in a tragic way. So I understand them not wanting to go and beat on it. But what the county did is they put some delineators. So just essentially glued some plastic, you know, wobbly toys straight up and down. And so what I started to observe in June when I got out.
Yeah, you froze.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you froze.
All I could hear was, sounded like Max Headroom from back in the old days.
Anyway, you're talking about they put up some toys up there, and
so
it's still not safe.
What I started observing in the area was that cars were jumping over. So where the delineators ended before the left turn that they're trying to encourage the cars to make at an appropriate speed, which prohibits, sort of, if you were to do so, it prohibits you from moving over with the delineators. They're just coming over earlier and getting in the opposite lane of traffic and driving that, 250 yards at, oncoming traffic. I'd witnessed it 3 times on my bike, coming down the hill, and you were far enough out, you can kind of see him doing it. But in the car, I actually felt more nervous driving down there. I had a big 250 F-250 jump over there, and I was just like, wow, man, that's crazy. So the thing that's interesting is that on a policy side, the city should be bringing forth, or the county, this is actually a county area, one or two proposals or one or two designs. So they should have an extreme design, and actually should be three, a middle, and then sort of maybe a conservative design. And so when they did this, you know, the obvious, I mean, I just started looking in the area, and I looked, well, why don't we just, when it comes out right there at Ethel's, you make a hard left, stay on the easement, go all the way down underneath the bridge that has plenty, it's above the floodplain, because you can see where the road's at, as well as where the oil derricks on Chevron are, and then pop back up on the other side. And then it allows you to come back behind Chevron's property, or you could just continue to hug the easement. I mean, it really, from there, you know, they could make it fairly simple. I mean, I do think that in a community that we live in that suffers so greatly from, you know, just the overall effects of not having a connection to an active lifestyle, the money shouldn't be an issue. So anyway, that the video I posted on my pages, which is iBike Kernan. As you know, I used to do iBike radio back when I had more time to do all those other fun things, and Kern Active Transportation and Vision Zero Kern. And again, those are things. Vision Zero is borrowed on a larger sense from just creating a community that sees a vision of zero fatalities on its roadways, and for all users, something pretty simple. I think we can all get into. But anyway, so thanks for letting me plug that a bit. And by all means, I would love, if you live here in Kern County, you walk, you bike, you run, you know, let me know about that, because I think that it's, you know, geez, I love riding next to the river. I think it'd be another opportunity to even take that thing all the way out and around and continue it all the way to the mouth of Hart Park. It just makes no sense that it wouldn't. It's such a beautiful area. So
I mean, it's great. It's great. I fortunately live in Westchester area, so I live 0.3 of a mile from the bike path, and I'm on there a lot. And a friend of mine, actually, the video kind of went a little semi-viral. Diego Diaz, a McFarland runner, ultra runner, done some Ironmans. He did a 40-mile FKT, fastest known time, the other day on the bike path last weekend. So he did the whole 40 miles basically from Darrell's Dinas Lane and back. And so he's all those kind of things. I'm always promoting, trying to get people, you know, hey, walk somewhere instead of, you know, drive there. And I also, I might have even told you the story, but I now stay on the bike path, but I used to have this little loop where I would walk from my house to Smith's Bakery and then up to BC to get some hills. And so I would be on the streets, and I used to carry a water bottle all the time. And it was so funny. I was standing in line because Smith's has great maple bars, but they also sell ice cold Diet Cokes for 75 cents. And so I'd often hit the place, and I'm standing in line. Usually I wouldn't stand in line because I just want to go. And there was 3 or 4 people in line. And then I hear this voice go, "Hey, Andy, you tagged any cars lately?" And what I do is when I walk on the streets, I obey all the traffic signals. I wait at crosswalks and everything. But when I'm at a crosswalk, you know, and people are in their cars and I get the little green man, those cars, they're not paying attention, and they often turn right and try and run me over. And so I always keep an eye on them, mad dog them. I've been walking and running in Bakersfield since 1979, and knock on wood, nobody's hit me. Bike, car, anything. And I plan on doing that. And I often say, if someone does hit me, if I can get up, I'm going to beat the crap out of them, you know? And so what I do a lot of times, and I do it to anybody, if they try and cut me off, when I used to have my water bottle, I would just love tap the back of their car with that bottle and scare the shit out of them. But then I think like maybe one day they'll look and not run over a little kid. Plus, I'm a big, ugly dude, so they're not going to get out of the car. And if they get out of the car, hey, like I talked to Bones and Brunches Nate, I'm from Bakersfield. Let's go. Right. I often tell people, you're going to see me in the newspaper someday. Pedestrian beats crap out of a motorist, or motorist beats crap out of pedestrian. And so this guy's like, "So you tagged any cars lately?" So I guess he'd seen my postings or something from it. I'm not on the streets as much, just because I've kind of got some loops and stuff. And yeah, and you know, the traffic, it's crazy, and all the cell phones. I love cycling, but there's just no way I would get on a bike. I did have an injury this year for the first time ever, and I did buy a bike. I bought one of these beach cruiser townies, they're called, and I ride it a little bit, but it's pretty terrifying. I couldn't imagine getting on a bike like you guys ride. So, yeah, so that was kind of the whole, just I'm always active. I always tell people like here in Bakersfield, they're like, hey, we got another heart hospital. And I'm like, oh, that's not a good thing. A community I want to have no heart hospitals. I mean, I was diagnosed with congestive heart failure, which was really more athletic heart, and I'm perfectly fine now. But, I want people more like we're hand in hand with that active lifestyle. So you're kind of doing all this, but then how I met you was way back in probably the late 80s, right? Your parents owned the store down the street from me and the music business. So when did we roll into each other? Do you have any recollection? Probably I opened in 87. Probably met you pretty soon after then, huh?
I would say 87 because I remember the Welcome to the Jungle album,
poster. The band
poster, the big poster
of the band cover. Yeah. The band cover. And so you guys had the pawn shop down the street. I guess that's what they call it, right? Or wasn't that? Yeah.
Griffin
and you
pawn shop. Yeah.
And you used to work there and come in the store. And of course, how did you were you in the music scene, right? When did you get kind of in the music scene in Bakersfield?
Well, see, I had the luxury of being able to, like many of us from our generation, to have a split home. So I was from 9 to 18, I would spend the school year in Oregon. And then, of course, every Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, spring break, I would come to Bakersfield. And so I was in the scene in both of our areas, but predominantly in Oregon until roughly 87 when I moved here.
Okay.
And then I met up with Mark Etch. It's funny because really Jennifer Dunn, I have to credit for, connecting me with a lot of people. I'd met her at BC, so September of 88, I guess, give or take August, September. And she had introduced me to Ray Franco, and Jason Howd, and then Alex Martinez, and Mark Echeverry, and John Charles, and many other. There was many people. I love y'all, but that said, many. But those were that kind of quickly grew into iconoclasm, essentially. And so really Mark and I, obviously as you're that age, you're way into music. And as you know, from Bakersfield, we were kind of post the pinnacle era of the 86, 85, sort of stuff. But there was still a lot of music going around, and there was still a lot of music. I mean, it was, I think in general, just not even here in Bakersfield, that those were the beginnings of some great music that was kind of coming out of a transition. You had Faith No More coming around. You had bands like Slayer still building and starting to blow up more. And anyway, that's it. So we started playing. In fact, I remember we did our first jam session in Rona's mom and dad's living room or something up by Oswell, somewhere off of Oswell in the 178, and some big old house. But anyway, that said, that sort of started us off. And I want to say our first show was 89, February 14th. St. Valentine's Day Massacre on Union at the Tropicana, right? It was so at the time it was an all-aged bar, and then it had a stage, and then it had apartments that were, who knows what the hell went on in those apartments that were attached right there off but it was and Bakersfield's music scene, there was so many, especially at that time. I mean, you had all that. There was just, there was Sharp, there was Skin stuff going on, and that stuff still bubbling around. And, and then you had, I mean, it's funny because LAPD, which, eventually becomes Korn, or at least, most of them become Korn. They were, them, or like Trucking for Jesus. I mean, there was also really humorous, satirical bands at that time too that weren't so uptight. But anyway, so we played a great show there. I think it was, I want to say Jay's band POD played. The guys Chuck and They ended up being radio. They having a radio show in LA. These two guys they actually went on to do really big stuff in radio. But so they did like a DJ rap.
Oh yeah,
kind of thing.
the Vidal brothers.
Yeah, so they were called the Fabulous Baker Boys. That was their deal, right?
Yeah, and they were young.
Yeah.
They were
So
like,
anyway,
12, 13. Yeah, yeah. And then of course we had the examples talking about funny, goofy bands, precursor like Bare Naked Ladies and Dead Milkmen. They're the examples. The Mormon band was rocking it out with the humor. Yeah, I mean it was a diverse scene, and I often kind of credit that because we were 2 hours from LA, but we were 2 hours from LA. So it's like you could hop down there, but there was a lot of not hopping down there. So we just kind of created the whole thing, and it was definitely a crazy time. I kind of got, I don't know whether it was lucky or just kind of got out of it, is that 1989 the Cure played Dodger Stadium, and a whole bunch of people came in the next day, and this young lady came in the store looking for a live demo tape, a live Cure cassette, and I've been married to her for 30 years now. So after about 89, I kind of quit going out and doing the scene. I heard about it, and so I was more of like a observer from above, but I wasn't going to the shows. And so I just hear pieces and bits. And I'm 57, so I'm like 7 or 8 years older than all of you guys, like you and Nate and stuff. Because how old are you?
50.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm a little bit above you guys, and so just watching it and listening and hearing the stories and having you guys come in, and so you now that you had various different bands. Now, did you have, because I don't know the history, a band that kind of did go touring around some and do some stuff like that, or I mean, I'd hear the bands, but I never knew.
We did, so most of any touring that we did was Central Valley and Southern California. We did Central and Southern California with Iconoclasm. Even at one point, one of my favorite shows really was Fresno. We go up there, you don't know, it's a college town. You're just thinking you're going to get, at least get somebody to show up, right? So you go up there and book a place, and it was us, Trucking for Jesus, which was Sean Smith, Brian Harris, Mike, and oh my goodness, I cannot remember who was playing drums. I apologize, but those guys were just having a blast, and getting drunk. I mean, we were, everybody was having a good time. Nobody was in the place, nobody except for the bartender lady or something. One of the roadies goes and, gets a sandwich from her at her house, and, comes back later. And I remember holding up Mike playing guitar while, the band they were just ripping it, but we were just playing for each other. It was some of the funnest times. I mean,
that's what it was all about.
Yeah.
I always thought I didn't, like I said, I didn't really know what was going on with you guys, but you guys always seemed to be having a good time. And of course, this was all like before social media and stuff. So you just heard bits and clips, basically just talk. And then maybe, your demo tapes would come and flyers. Like kids today can't imagine, like everything you knew about Swag 667 was from flyers. That's one of your bands. Like there was like sadly, I have no photos or anything from my store because it was going good from 87 to like 9 till 2000. And then I had some little minor places because I was just doing doing eBay stuff. But so by 2000, I just got the internet, because I got the internet really late because I had kids and money and so I didn't even get online until like 1999, 2000. But I knew it was killing me because no one was buying anything anymore. They were just all downloading and loading off of Napster and shit. But so it was kind of crazy. So you did all this music stuff, and then when did you get into like the whole cycling stuff? When did that come? Much later?
No, well, that's interesting because I've had, again, and this is why I harp on connecting when you're a young person, and why the importance of recognizing who you are as a pedestrian.
Yeah.
And then building on that is that so when I moved from, we all rode bikes as kids, obviously at a certain age, you were allowed to leave the house a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, we all did that.
Today. Yeah. Which is nuts. It's not any day more.
I know.
I used to skateboard from Bakersfield College to Valley Plaza and back.
Right. Somebody on a Schwinn beach cruiser, you either holding the back of it going up the hill or just pushing yourself. I mean, that was just the way it was. You weren't getting a ride from mom. She was at work, man. You want to get that done. No. You want to go to On the Run or go get, something from the mall. You better get over there yourself.
Yeah.
So I went from at the time, I think my dad had gotten his second divorce. We were living outside of Davis, essentially. And so I moved to Southern Oregon. And within a year, 10, 11 years old, I, started to ride more. And I wanted to play baseball. And I lived like down a mile dirt road and then, 7 miles from town. So I started riding. And, my stepdad got me a 10-speed. And then I saw Breaking Away. And I thought, well, that's cool. And mom had me go. I entered a ride, just like a ride you would do with your kids. And so I kicked my mom's rear end, and then she made me go do like a bike course. I have the course itself which was done by the same League of American Cyclists, is sort of the oldest cycling organization in the world. Mm-hmm. Anyway, or the nation, excuse me. So she sent me to one of those classes to sort of learn the basic rules of the road and how to maintain your shit and, just the basics, right? And so from there, I just started racing. I actually started racing juniors. And then baseball, though, was the thing. I love playing baseball. And, that was all it was all about. I wanted to be Kent DeColvey. I wanted to throw sidearm, underhand, or whatever it was that you were into at the moment. And so, but that carried with me. And then, of course, I got 16, and you get a car, you get access to a car, and then that allows you to go to baseball practice and then go by your girlfriend's house. But we still always, like, I remembered riding to Grants Pass, which was probably 25 miles away. So a 50-mile round journey. I talked me and my friend into riding over there to see some girls, that we'd met at a baseball game in Grants Pass. And so, good. I've had a relationship and, with it since then. And then when I moved here and, played music, I eventually moved to Los Angeles in about 1990, and got involved in mountain biking again there. Just had some friends of mine who were engaging in it, and I bought a mountain bike, and Sean Smith and I would again, reconnect from the early days of playing music, and would go riding Mount Pinos and Keysville, and got to see Tinker Juarez, and so got into that, the whole punk rock style of being out in the woods and doing whatever you want to do and jumping shit and crashing and generally scaring the shit out of yourself.
It's interesting because I had basically the similar background of I was a big baseball player and played other sports, but I rode bikes from a very young age because that's how I got around. I didn't have mom in a gigantic SUV driving me a mile to school and then picking me up. And it's really weird. I wish we could get our society back to that, from that disconnect. Now, you go to any school and there's just this armada of cars driving junior. And my kids, they either walk to school. Well, unfortunately, we're on the wrong side of 24th Street, so it's impossible to cross the street. You take your life in your own hands. And then, of course, the assholes now built a crosswalk still. They couldn't put us a bridge over it or a tunnel, so you still can't cross it. But it'd be amazing if we could somehow, and I don't know if we'll ever get back. It's just this whole concept that it's scary and dangerous out there, when the most scary and dangerous thing is usually in your own home. The people who love you.
Yeah. And those cars are really, it's interesting because we clutter ourselves with these extra burdens and we don't look at the ambient costs. We accept far too great of a loss to the automobile for lives, as well as real estate. And think about what you were just saying about the schools, right? What do we not have enough money for, right? Schools. Yet outside the school is, a cool $1 million or $2 million in automobiles daily.
Yep.
So there's each one of them has a $9,000 price tag per year that doesn't have anything to do with the car payment or the insurance payment. It just has to do with the upkeep and the gas. Yeah.
It's the externalities, is what they call it in economic terms. That we just don't take into account. And it would be lovely because it is kind of funny. Like you were talking about baseball. I used to ride to and from out to Oildale. I played NOR baseball. And I used to ride my bike out there. And even when I was in college, I always had to come home from UC San Diego. I was a scorekeeper out at NOR. And I used to ride out there in the summer, score games at north of the river. And then at 10 o'clock at night, ride over to Galaxy, drop the scorecards off, and then ride back to BC where I lived. So I was out commuting and riding bikes. And I kind of got into cycling in high school, never was much of a cyclist because I never had the equipment, and it was just out of my league. Kind of like we were talking about before. I had like a Schwinn varsity so I could show up and ride with you guys and get my ass handed to me. Like I won the first Bakersfield triathlon in 1981, my senior year, on a Schwinn varsity. But yeah. And then I remember I got in college, I was doing triathlons. I finally got an Italian bike, like a Rossini with some Campo parts. And that was, but I kind of got out of the cycling because it is, like I said, it's a very expensive sport and become even more so. And so with the walking and running and things like that. So it's just interesting that we kind of have a similar background of playing baseball. And in fact, baseball is how I got into running. I moved to Bakersfield in junior high, 8th grade. I was a decent athlete. I was as big as I am now. I mean, height-wise, I was like 5'8", 9". And I wasn't making teams. I was sitting on the bench at Highland way too much. So the middle of my sophomore baseball season, I was like, I want to play. I want to compete. This baseball shit sucks. I'm sitting on the bench. I think I should be playing. So I left the team, went out for the track team, and broke 5 minutes in the mile. And I was like, oh, if I win races, I get to go to the next race. It doesn't matter who I am or the coach or anything. And so I got into running purely as like a competitor. It's just a competition. And I always tell people I'm not like a lot of runners because I come from like being a shortstop and point guard mentality, not the lonely distance runner and all that kind of bullshit, or people. And that's one of the problems I have in my sport is a lot of these people come into running late in life. So they've got this whole, Zen thing about it. And just, and in cycling, you got a lot of people, they find Jesus on a bike kind of thing. But yeah. And I appreciate all the different levels, but but I sometimes run into difficulties with people in the sport because of that. And then, of course, as I talk to Nate, run into difficulties in things because I'm from here. The whole Brundage, hate, or just, like hate, it's just that whole attitude. So it's very, what's that?
These two guys I have Skype. Two of them are from out of town who actually one just moved here, a gentleman by the name of Rick Weatherald, physical therapist in town. Great guy, 37. And he and this guy, we've been riding a bunch. And so they were referring to me as, the Lawrence Fishburne or whoever it is that says motherfucker all the time, because, that's just, and you forget about it, right? You forget about how uncivilized we can be here with our language in Central Valley, in Bakersfield.
It's a hard place. It's a hard, and we know it, like, it's been brutal being out there and you're still putting in the miles with this 110 degree weather and the humidity. At least you're getting to go fast. So you're getting some air blowing on your ass. I've been just dying out there. It's just been crazy. So another thing I really admired about you is, you mentioned it, you went back to school and that's really cool. Got done with Taft already, right? And now you're at Cal State?
Yes, sir. Start Monday at Cal State. 18 set up right now. We'll see if I keep 18. I'm going to make sure if I drop, I gave myself enough wiggle room to drop one if I needed, but I want to try to knock out 18 this semester. I really want to stay on that. I want to be subbing by next year. I need 30 by next year to get subbing. Mm-hmm. So I figure by end of spring semester, I guess it would be. Anyway, so excited for that. A little, you know how it is. Nervous. Oh, yeah. Just trying to remind myself to relax and enjoy the last few days here before I don't get to relax as much anymore. And but yeah, it's been a really an interesting, self-discovery for sure.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the things.
Yeah, I think that's an important part of just the human existence. I think that's the thing too. You were talking about sort of how we have these connections to sort of these things, and I think that these things like running, walking, riding, baseball, the enjoyments that we had as a young person have allowed us to be able to maintain a connection as we've gotten older. And I think that's something that we have rushed in our infancy as a society to move so much further, almost like an adolescent. And I find that as you mentioned, can we ever get back to that? And I don't know. I truly don't know, because I don't know if there's enough commitment on a large scale to do so. I don't know if we can pull anything back like that. I really just don't know. But I do know that kids are going through school every day. And if you want to create, whether it's, people who question things and are more angst driven, like a lot of us, music fans were, or people that want to go out and really touch the world around them, like people who go outside and hike and walk and, ride bikes and all that. I think that's the more important thing. And I think making it more complicated than that, is not doing it any justice. And so, I look forward to being able to apply some of that at school here, or in the school system in the future.
Yeah, well, you said you're doing the multi-subject, so you're kind of geared towards the elementary then, right?
Yeah, and then I'm going to actually get my special education credential, because again, I think there's another, you have a group of our community will never ever drive a car, and the reality is that what will allow them to be more sustainable moving forward, a connection of how to functionally work within the society using active transportation. Now, I want to be honest, I've done a lot of, so in the course of doing this, not only, you do the bike rodeo. It's funny because you touched on how people can come to something and they think they've got it all figured out. So your traditional bike rodeo, your kid goes to at the school, little fluff toy. Here's we're going to give you some stop signs. Here's your left, right, left, now get on the course. Okay, everybody. But essentially it's a show. And because when you look at how we learn, you don't just learn from one particular event. It has to be reinforced. So in the show, the idea is that they take that home and hopefully they'll bring it to mom and dad and they'll begin to use that. Now, a lot of us, our parents grew up where we had like clubs, like Boys and Girls Club, where you would actually go and spend a week doing that behavior, right? So those are pretty, those are kind of basic and those are great. But then, junior high and actually taking it from the fourth and so taking it from fifth grade, from junior high and into junior high. And I say that in the sixth and above sixth grade, like, because sixth graders are they're pretty much elementary kids, really. They do what you ask them to do. They're for the most part, they're not trouble. But seventh and eighth and ninth, man, that's a hell of a time. So getting them to recognize, and what was interesting is that I started writing programs through a couple of grants through the Office of Traffic Safety. Anyway, it's a organization that every state has. We have a California division. It's designed to help promote car seat safety, roadway safety, etc. So I figured this out, how to write these grants, particularly to be able to add these in. And I did it with BPD first. And then I was doing the rodeos, and then I learned that I could train their officers, or at least I got them committed to training their officers. And then we did a bike court thing, focused in on pedestrian safety, and we'd have the conversations with them over, But the ones that I really think that were really the most effective for, and the junior high thing, one of the things I wanted, again, connecting two dots here, is that the experience with the junior high was really great because I was able to get with Standard School District, and hats off to Paul Meyer, superintendent of Standard School District, for believing in me and believing in the principles behind active transportation. So we were able to do, over 3 years, a program. We would go into your PE class, and I would run that PE class for 3 weeks. So I start with, you start with your model, and then of course, which is, you tell them about the rules, show videos, and talk about why we do them. Co-model, so we get out and we talk about it again, and then we get them on the bike and I ride with them, and then I put them back out on that last week. And so one of the cool things about that I learned in this process is, one is that, and of course PE teachers, smacked me on the back of the head and told me the second year. So it wasn't like I came up with this, but girls learn so much better when they're away from the boys, and boys seem to learn a little bit better when they're away from the girls. But what I thought was really cool, coming from, like you said, our kind of more of an athletic background where I didn't have to be talked into doing stuff. I just seemed to like it. Girls seem to have a really disconnected a relationship with active transportation on a very large sense. And I think at junior high, it's really interesting to me to sort of see that start to really begin to start wedging out, right? Some don't want to participate. It's uncool, right? And the thing that I would notice is that once you get the girls on the bikes and let them free ride, they would socialize. They would ride in groups, and they would talk, and they would enjoy themselves. And I would point out to them after they were done that, you guys were working out. You didn't even know it. And so I think that those are great opportunities. And again, the thing with the ninth grade, those classes, and again, I think this is, one of these things that we don't do enough of, incorporating toys to tools. So what was that bike when you were a kid? What was walking? It was just something you did. It's fun. Woo, I run around. Yeah. But it's a tool. It's a tool that in the next 4 years, so here you are in ninth grade, and we would do them in the ninth grade, you have to have a health class. Every kid in the state of California has to have a health class. So they do this in the sustainable lifestyles portion of that health class. And let's talk about walking and biking and how you do so safely. You've been doing it for years. Think about where you were 4 years ago. Where do you want to be in the next 5 years?
Yeah.
How are you going to get there? And we would go over the budget after. Of course, you go over the how to do it and stuff, but I would go over a budget, and we would pretend that they're 19 now. And it was funny to see how they had no idea of what to do with any of their, they would come out to being about $6,000 short for money. They'd buy a car. I'd give them a car. Absolutely. I would give them the car. And then they get Wi-Fi, they get all this other crap. And then I'm like, okay, well, what about food? Well, you're $3,000 short. What are you going to do now? Or $6,000 short, how about you give up that car? Oh, well, there you go. That's $9,000 a year. You know what Uber is? But the thing that I loved about it, and that I'm always reminded of, and it reminds me of the Who song, the kids are all right, is that, again, young people are receptive. They're ready for it. They're ready to do it. They're just let us know, show us the way, and we're ready to go. Challenge them. And that's the one thing that I loved about and convinced me that I needed to go and do this track in education.
That's good.
I'm 50 years old, and it's not like it's going to make me $1 million, but I think it's my last punk rock stance, Andy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was talking to Nate, and, he's doing his thing, and I've always done my thing, and I've never had money. I'm never getting a lot of money doing what I'm doing, but I'm doing what I enjoy doing and having an impact in a certain way in terms like actually it was kind of funny this evening before I got online with you. I've been coaching athletes, adults, since 2009, off and on. And one of my gals who I'm friends with also, she's doing the High Sierra Trail in a few weeks. She had some time today. She dropped her kid off at fencing lessons. She showed up at my house, but she had her 7-year-old, and the 7-year-old was on his BMX bike, and we walked over to the bike path, and we walked to Golden State and back, and we were out there with a 7-year-old and all the craziness of that. We only got in 2 miles, but just kind of, I always say, just doing those little things over and over and over. And so, like, if you're friends with people who have kids and stuff, help them, mentor them, and like, hey, incorporate. Like, I'll say, oh, I can't go. I don't got anybody to watch so-and-so. In fact, I just did a podcast on how to, if you're a parent, how to go out and do your sport if you got kids. You got to modify it. But, like when they have soccer practice, you can walk or run around the practice field and all those kind of things. But it's definitely kind of interesting just talking. One of the things you touched on is you briefly talked about the electric bikes. What's the situation with that? And one of the things that I'm really concerned is, a couple months ago, we're out at Hart Park walking around and hiking out there, and young guys are blasting all over the place on those things. And at first you're like, how's that person riding up Pistol Range Hill so damn fast? And you're like, oh, it's an e-bike. So what's going on with that? What, the legalities? Are they going to be on the bike path, or just
so
somehow
it's an interesting deal. We've got my personal feeling is that it's like a hammer. Sadly, it's a hammer can be used to destroy something. It can be used to kill somebody, but it can also be used to build beautiful things like a house, fine furniture, etc. So, the e-bike, does it have its place in the right hands? Absolutely. I've seen some couples out, just getting out there, but I've also seen a guy trying to do 20-something miles over 20 miles an hour on the thing. And so on the bike path, and just well above his ability. And I think that's the thing that I struggle with, is because, much like you were mentioning earlier, is that it's great when people want to come, they find this, you know, hey, I need to connect with my physical side again. And oftentimes that, you know, no disrespect to people who've got enough money to drop on, you know, I mean, not to say that running costs a lot of money, but, you know, traveling and taking the time off, it's all time. It's all time. I mean, if you're going to do a 24-hour run, you still got to have 24 hours. And that means you've got somebody watching your kids. That means you got your bills paid. That means you got some places that crash, because after 24 hours of running, you're going to need to fall asleep for 48 hours, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So those are things that, you know, training and endurance training, it's costly emotionally, physically, as well as to your family, and then financially. So yeah, that's great that a person in their 30, 35 years old, that's usually the masters category. I'm sure you see that in running. That's the age in which you see all these guys kind of coming and gals coming back to it, right? All that's cool, but you know, I think that it's they miss some of the core aspects of sort of what we've learned over the years of why we do it. The courtesies, the just the amount of carnal knowledge that goes through it. And so to me, it's hard to balance those two. So here we have the bike path, and the question that really is before us is really, and even in Hart Park, the question before us is stewardship, and the county and the city have an obligation to provide a stewardship in that direction that provides for a safe usage. Now, I know the Kern River Parkway founders are absolutely livid over the electric bikes on there, because, you know, their question is what stops an electric motorcycle? So
it's a slippery slope for sure.
Right. And so Councilman Smith's argument is that he just wants to see more bikes on there. And okay, I have ridden there quite a bit lately, and there are plenty of bikes on there.
Yes.
There are plenty of bikes. I would say the issue isn't bikes on there. I would say the issue is, as we know, once you get past a certain portion of the bike path, safety becomes a greater issue, which deters people from using more of it. More of those community members that you see at Riverwalk, let's say, don't go much past feet park at best. So, and then again, going back to my issue that I mentioned earlier, is that when you peak out at Daryl's, you're really out on a class 2 at best, and you're on a class 1 in some sections next to 55 mile an hour plus traffic going out to Hart Park. So, you know, again, stewardship. So there's no bike path rules, and I'm going to give you a little history on this, and I'm sure you may remember. So 10 years ago, give or take, Lord, I apologize if I'm not right on the date, but 8 or 10 years ago, somebody was hit, because this happens, you know, secular thing. Just get spring. Everybody loves biking. You know, Lance wins the tour. Everybody buys a bike. So somebody ran into a lady and hurt her bad, and then rode off and didn't tell anybody. And it was, you know, and I've been riding that path for years, and it's always been a pain in my rear to see people rip through the areas of which are high density. Why do you need to do it? You know, you don't need to do it. So that's all stewardship on our end. And I hated to see this woman get hit. I was working with Bike Bakersfield at the time. So we were part of this county, you know, the parks department, blah, 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 meeting, whoop, whoop, whoop. We're going to talk about putting some things together. So they came up with these etiquette rules, right? They're not enforceable, but they're like, don't go over 17 miles an hour. And they used to be pinned. If you go by Manor Park, you can kind of see them pinned to the entrance there to Manor Park parking lot. But they never did anything with them. And so, you know, the other, you know, issue is stewardship as well, in the sense that if you want to encourage people to do the right thing, the owners of that particular thing have to manage it. So if we're going to put 20-mile-an-hour vehicles that, if pedaled really hard by athletic people, can go 27 on there, what are we weighting the safety of? People who have enough money to spend on $5,000 machines, or people who are maybe more economically challenged and in need of the use of that particular public, you know, consumable, as it were, to better their lives. And it seems to me that weights that answer to those people. So I don't understand, and quite frankly, I also don't understand, getting to what I was saying to you about my appreciation of the walking community and bike and running community, is that I really feel that the gentrification of the bike as the answer is ridiculous, and it's a little heavy-handed. So, you know, one of the problems with that, and I'll just lay it out for all the, you know, the locals and the statewide folks to get, you know, kind of take a deep breath in. Cal Bike, the local biking group, the California State Biking Group has really pushed for that. Now, I think an e-bike has got a wonderful place on a class 1, or excuse me, a class 2 or on the roadway. You know, that's great. Next to a car, on the roadway, in the bike lane, you know, okay. But on the bike paths that are multi-use paths, it just seems, and to your, you know, Andy, and I know that, you know, that when you walk through the Riverwalk spot, there's an extra piece of pavement on one side that's supposed to be for walkers, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's not on the other side. It's nowhere else on the path, because again, it's another underserved amenity that you want people to use, but you don't, city and the county don't want to pay the price of having that thing there. You don't want to pay the cost to be the boss. And to me, it's a steward. That is it's a failure in leadership. And I appreciate everything Councilman Smith does for the community, but I think that to me, it's you know, I'm sorry that he doesn't see it, but it is the idea of the electric bike, even an electric bike share. I've heard them continue to talk about this electric bike share thing, and you know, I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm going to connect a dot here. You know, having an opportunity to have an effect on young people's lives is a wonderful thing. I have been away from coaching for a bit, and had a friend who is a coach for South. He's an assistant coach for South's running team, cross country and track. He's an officer here in town, Hispanic descent. And so he connected with me, a young kid who just graduated, valedictorian, Danyan Castillo, graduated as valedictorian, one of, I think, 5 at South High, going on to Berkeley. And he was you know, he was a kid who walked to school and liked walking so much, started running, and shit, he got to school and just kept running and doing classwork. And so 4.5 on to Berkeley. So Ramon called me because he got him on a bike not that long ago. And, you know, so he's taken off, having some great, you know, he wanted to break the mile record at South, and obviously COVID didn't allow it. So he had some sort of, and it's funny because he's an overachiever, and it's funny to see that overachievers get let down and get bummed out. And, you know, just like the rest of us, the valedictorian bummed out, you know. It was interesting to, on the bike, find success on the bike, and that's a whole wonderful thing, and, you know, we love to see that. But the other part I was wanting to relate to what we were talking about with the e-bike is that recently I said to him, because his parents are first generation immigrants from Mexico, and I said, would your dad give up his car, you know, for an e-bike? You know, would that be the thing that he would do? Do you think that would fit your lifestyle? And he's like, no way. There's just no way. And his father's only 41. So you're coming right over, and you're the first generation trying to fight to make it and assimilate with America. And America is cars. So it's hard to argue and try to see the logic in trying to convince, you know, Moses that he needs to get rid of his damn car. Have this freaking, you know, have his wife take the kids around, and, you know, they've walked plenty. I guarantee Moses has walked plenty in his life, you know. So
well,
it's really but Canyon, on the other hand,
oh, you broke up.
Son on the other, when the son on the other hand, when he gets to Berkeley, you know, and starts to grow in his life, and, you know, he'll buy, you know, I could see him buying a grocery getter and having the money to maybe even buy an electric bike, haul his kids and his books around when he goes to, you know, grad school or something. But, you know, to look at the solution that people of economically challenged communities should go to as a $5,000 commitment that you can't store anywhere, will get stolen in front of your house, is ridiculous. And I struggle with that being our answer all the time here, instead of honoring the basics of just
some of the things I wanted to say about like the whole thing is like, one, I never bought into car culture. I've never liked cars. I moved to Bakersfield in 8th grade and I was like completely blown away because especially here, all of the boys want to do is talk about cars. And I, to this day, my friend got a new car. And I was like, oh, cool. I thought she had a Subaru all the time and I've actually driven it. She actually bought another Honda and I just assumed. So I've never cared for cars. I used to bike to Highland and back and forth. But one of the things, and we're having this in the trail running community especially, is the trail running community is upper middle class, mainly white, and they're running on these trails. And I tell people all the time, I go, it's a sense of entitlement that you can come here and close up these trails and use them. And what happens is, when I was a poor kid, I went to the parks, I went to the mountains once a year. And so now these kids are coming and you're having this giant mountain bike race or trail race and ruining my weekend. And then like the bike path is another perfect example of like, you've got people of lower income at Beach Park and at Yokit's running in the water when we got water, running around, and they have no concept that there's these privileged people riding $5,000 and $10,000 bikes through the area. They don't even know what you guys are doing. They can't even, to them, riding a bike is how they get to their job. Their dad gets their job. Right. And so when you guys, not you, but people are whizzing through in high traffic times, the sense of outrage I get, and I send that to you sometimes. I'll look up on Strava and see what what guy went blasting through Beach Park in his drops. And I'll say, hey, Zach, do you know this guy? And you're like, oh, yeah. No, maybe the next time I see him, I'll do a word. In fact, I was at Mount Pinos recently, and these guys, mountain bikers, were flying down Mount Pinos, the main trail, the road part.
Yeah.
But there were like Cub Scouts and stuff, and they're blasting by these little kids. So I went on Strava and found out who they were and wrote them because they were a club. And I said, hey, dudes, what the hell are you doing? Your guys. And thankfully I talked to one who was like, yeah, we need to police that a little better. And I said, you think so? Because the other problem is you're putting jackasses on these expensive things. They don't know how to ride them. So, kind of like a hammer, you're giving these guys these elite, you're giving guys Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and they haven't been on a bike in ever. And, and then cause problems. So it is an issue that I'd love. And the whole e-bike thing, it's just, I think they have absolutely no place on the bike path at all. And
right.
It's just going to be a nightmare.
Yeah. And my frustration is that the cycling community is trying to give them a seat at the table. Rich O'Neill said it to me this way. He said, listen, that bike path was built with walking and biking money. And e-bikes are trying to get a free ride on that thing, and they didn't do a damn bit of work. Mm-hmm. And I struggle with why, and this is something that I've struggled with. So as I've matured as a cyclist, one of the things, I'm going to dovetail back. You had asked me how I got into cycling, and I'll kind of tie this into sort of as I, moved on past iconoclasm and started playing.
Yeah.
Biking kind of became I got into 1999. I'd been riding in between, but really I was playing music and chasing myself around. And so, and right before that I was playing in Swag 667 quite a bit. And so, as I segued out of that, I really started picking up snowboarding and got back into mountain biking a lot and would go race. And I got my pro license eventually, which you don't buy a pro license. You have to be moved up and win. And so through the war of attrition, I was able to get moved up, and I raced, I don't know how many years, 5, 7, something like that, years, just get my ass whooped. I mean, that's all it really means. I might get a top 3 somewhere along the line, somewhere in a national, but West Coast national. But that's it. The idea of using the bike path, as the place you work out hard is really, 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 really ridiculous. It's
a place to get to the place you're supposed to work out. It's the warm-up place.
Exactly. Exactly. And there's no need. And so again, to your point, you see this behavior that the newbies get. I had in this conversation about the crossing and then the e-bikes with the Kern River Parkway Foundation people, they also gave me a name of a gentleman here in town who has been hammering through those sections. And I was very disappointed because he too is attempting to be a professional, and he's getting paid to ride his bike. And it's disappointing because I think these are fairly common sense things. You can do those outside of the bike path area for sure. And it's so the complication of the e-bike is just even more ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like such a disaster. I mean, thankfully, the Spurred scooter shit showed up here and thankfully left. But I know, like, I listen to Lance Armstrong's podcast, and he does some really good podcasts. And he was talking about, like, being in Austin and how the invasion of those electric scooters was insane because they were on all the public roads. And he's just was bitching about it and how crazy and scary it was to the point where he didn't even want to get on his bike anywhere or even anywhere because those people, thankfully, whatever happened to those, they faded off. And so maybe that'll happen with the electric scooter. I think the electric scooter is dorky enough and not cool enough that it won't really ever take off. Electric bikes won't take off here in Bakersfield that much because, I mean, it's too, like I said, a lot of guys aren't going to give up their F-150s.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think that I actually think what you're seeing in the foothills is the thing we have to watch out for.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's crazy.
What you're going to see is the dude ain't going to give up his F-250. He's going to get another KT100, but this one's going to be with a Bosch motor that has, because in Europe, they got these electric, they have ones that'll, I guess that guy, Simon Cowell, damn near killed himself on one that's, I mean, it'll go 40, 50, 60 miles an hour, 75 miles an hour. So the idea of taking the motorcycle engine away, the two-stroke engine's great. I'm all, oh, cool, that's a great, but the reality is that without, just like you were mentioning out there, without just like with the bike path and you mentioning your issues out there, the lack of stewardship by the county and the city, because it's actually city that runs that area above there that we all ride and hike in. And they don't provide any enforcement, nothing. And that's the same that you got going on. So I understand the argument for progress and getting people to be more inclusive, but I say that this is more to the sense of, hey, that's going to create unintended consequences. That's going to be like bringing in the freaking, the weasel to get the rat, in Hawaii. I mean, it's just, or the mongoose to get the rats in Hawaii. You're just going to end up with a shitload of mongoose and a shitload of rats because them fuckers don't hang out at the same time. So, I just, and that to me, kind of getting to the bird scooter thing is that I've been doing this long enough to hear, again, the city, and then of course encouragement, because Councilman Smith carries such a large, he's an extremely successful developer here in town, has a lot of connections throughout town. And so his weight of his words go a long way. And the city truly believes he is, if he says, hey, bird scooters are great, they seem to jump onto it, and they seem to, And that was one of my frustrations, because again, like you said about Austin, when they were going through these conversations, I would bring them articles upon articles that say, hey, no, Santa Monica's having a problem. I have a friend of mine, again, Sean Smith from Trucking for Jesus and Swag 667, works in LA, and they do a lot of commuter stuff in downtown Santa Monica. And so he had told me the issues already. And again, you come to them and you tell them, listen, no, and they wasted money on that shit. I mean, they wasted our money on that. And that's the thing about with this dumbass e-bike crap. I mean, I listened to them tell, and I listened to someone whose name I'll keep, we'll keep off the table, but their idea was to take 12 e-bikes to the community members who would then, and this was a funny, blog about it, because I thought that was so archaic, Maybe they'll put it on their MySpace too and blog too.
Yeah.
This podcast, guys, this podcast.
Yeah.
These 12 community members would take these bikes, use them, blog about it, and then that is going to be how we're going to get people to engage in active transportation. That's going to be the encouragement and education, and we'll do some classes. And I thought, man, okay, what's your target? And I did, you're not supposed to say much in these meetings. And I just gently asked what the target market was. And, if you'd have said to me, I'm looking to change the, perceptions of middle-class women to upper-class women who make $100,000 to $250,000. Oh, okay, great. All right. Well, that might, cool. They might read a blog and have that kind of time and the money,
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah.
that's not our target market in Bakersfield, who are the underserved. So it doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense. But you don't, you can't say that shit to them because nobody wants to hear you fucking saying anything. So
Yeah, it sounds like hopefully things won't get too crazy, but you kind of have to look at like more people. We have thankfully such a car culture that I think the bike path probably won't get inundated. Now, thankfully, I guess the city just today installed some posts on Chester, because I noticed that the urban outdoorsmen now have been driving their cars to their campsites on the bike path. And I've been bitching and complaining about it for months, and thankfully they finally, because that's just insane. You have these crazy people driving their cars to their campsites where they're not supposed to be camping to begin with. It's like,
right.
So that
well, we've been
thankfully
seeing vehicles. We've been seeing vehicles on that 24th Street construction project that they're doing there at the bridge and Beach Park. We've been seeing the construction crew, the contractors' vehicles, man, flying on there as well. Not to mention, like you said, the private KOAs that are, attending. The funny thing too about that is that again, when I call and I go to these meetings and I say, what about this? And this is the answer that I get from our local advocacy, as well as our city lead person, is what part? Because they don't use them, that is just, and that to me is the toughest part of some of this, is that, you're sitting there with uninformed people who have to be there, who somehow get to wait out our future with this.
Unfortunately, to tie it into kind of the theme I often with my endurance noise, I do a lot of races, and one of the races I specialize in is those fixed timed events. Now, fixed time events are the dorky, uncool type of thing. But what happens is people see money in it. So a lot of race directors put them on, but they've never actually done the race. So it's kind of like putting on a mountain bike race, but you've maybe rode a road bike around a beach cruiser. And so so they design courses and they put stuff together that's dangerous or not fair or uncompetitive, or they'll say they have rules and then they don't abide by the rules, or they don't enforce them, and it's just such chaotic mess. So unfortunately, it's in all of our aspects of everything. But it's good that you're out there, kind of at least a voice, to kind of but more like they should definitely be listening to you, because you're logging hours and hours on that damn bike path. So am I, and we see this stuff. But that's just kind of the
on a positive note, I think that's why, it's daunting. And I think both of us can say tongue in cheek, it is a pain in the ass. And I can't, but it's I think that the thing moving forward, again, kind of the reason why I find, and I swear it's like, I am getting older, obviously, but it's funny turning 50, I really appreciate watching my son or his friends or these younger kids come through these things, because I think it restores my faith in the sense that, it's just like water onto the beach. We're going to knock this rock into sand. And over time, it just, and so focusing in on, like, when we were young, and we were making our, mark, and say we were playing, we want to change right now. And that's great. And so, that's important to help harness young people, because I think, when we were talking about how you had some experiences with running and how you can get, say with biking, say you go from, and I'd like to do more of this, but I can't. And one of the things that, like, say with Danyon, that I recognize is that, and I think is really important and is missed here, is that getting young people connected to stewardship as they develop, through mentorship, is something that is underrepresented anymore. So so say you come out of high school and you're running, right? And there's a local cycling club that says, we got some bikes you can ride. They're not super badass, but because honestly, Danyon was on an $800 bike, and he about tore the cranks off of it, but he could rip everyone up on that $800 bike. So given the opportunity with a great building block, the ones that want to pursue that avenue can pursue that, right? And you know, whether I ran into four boys with flat tires on Sunday from their West High boys, but they didn't know how to change their tubes and all that stuff. So, you know, you can be Daniel and want to be a super fit, you know, try to, you know, race professional and have these athletic desires, and it can be something that you can build on. But he wouldn't have gotten his $4,000 bike if it wasn't for philanthropic connections. And there are some very giving, new to this community people, which is really odd to me because I've been doing this a long time, and getting anyone to give a bike to somebody that doesn't have a shitload of money and have a price tag quietly attached to it on the back is just unheard of. God love our bicycle shops, but you know, and the new ones are forgiven, but you old ones, you know, just it's all about and so anyway, seeing what this young person can do with that opportunity and seeing how important it is for more people to think more about how they can connect young people to whether, I mean, it doesn't have to be athletics in the sense that I'm talking about, or you're talking, it can be dancing, it can be fencing, it can be karate, it can be soccer, all these things, you know, allowing them to have the opportunities, school, to develop and get that extra bit of mentorship from other people is what's going to change. And to me, that's the reason I got into that goddamn music stuff, for sure. And I feel like that's the one thing that as I get older that, as long as I'm doing that, man, I'm freaking stoked, man. I'm stoked.
Very good. Sounds great. You're kind of just to wrap things up talking about, you know, we're talking about, you know, the water on the beach on them turning into sand. The thing is, I was listening to a podcast. I don't remember, I listened to so many, but they were saying that one of the things you have to realize is that the world, you know, isn't as violent a place as it used to be. It used to be far, far more violent. And then also, like, we're going through all this COVID, but this guy, Dan Carlin, who does Hardcore History, said, he goes, yeah, but we're only dealing with COVID. Back in the day, when there was the plague, you still had cholera, measles. You had 18 other things were trying to kill you. Right now, we just got one thing. So it is progress in this kind of, whether it's here nor there.
Yeah.
And so, you know, throughout, you know, so it's kind of, we're in a time, we were just kind of in this holding pattern, but just kind of just to say, you know, things we're kind of talking, you know, because, you know, you have a passion and I have a passion, and, you know, it's good to just, you know, kind of go out there and make some noise, and things do slowly get changed because people from both sides coming in and trying to talk about stuff. And it's good to have someone like yourself, you know, doing what you're doing, and just everybody just doing their own little part. You know, you don't have to do like you and completely uproot your life and go back to school, but just on your daily, be, you know, be conscious of your actions and what you're doing. I think, you know, I try to do that as I get older, you know, and try and make, you know, just little things, you know, make it better. Like have my friends going, oh, I can't walk today because I got my 7-year-old. Well, bring them along, you know, don't be like, bro, we got to work out, and you're messing up my world if we got to bring the kid, you know, and just all those little things just add up. So
Yeah, for sure.
Good talking to you. So school's starting up next week, and full load.
Yeah, full load. See if I can even get in writing at all.
Well, I went to UC, when I went to UC San Diego, I listened to counselors, and I only took 12 units of the first quarter, and I did terribly because I only had 3 classes. And then I started taking, you know, 4 or 5 classes. And I ended up getting out of there a quarter early. So it's, for me, I was more focused when I had more of a workload, but definitely hope success on that. And like I said, thanks for coming on. And I definitely wanted to get the word out, and we seeing you probably out on the bike paths.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thanks a lot for coming out. If people want to get a hold of you, do you have some place that they can find you easiest? Type of, if anybody wants to.
Instagram at Zach Allen, ZACALLYN, at Zach Allen on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, Zachary A. Griffin. You can find me there. And then, like I said, I Bike Kern, which is on Facebook and on Instagram, at I Bike Kern on Instagram. Okay. And then Kern Active Transportation and Vision Zero Kern. So I Bike Kern, roughly, just real quick, is just more generally for biking. You know, I want to promote biking, and obviously we share some of the same content. And Kern Active Transportation is more of a larger picture, and then Vision Zero Kern is more of a safety-driven idea for all of us that use the roadway: bike, car, walk, bus, etc.
All right. Well,
Andy,
if anybody,
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. I was going to say, and so if anybody, you know, some of the topics we were talking about, you agree or disagree with us, you know, get a hold of us. We just love to have a dialogue with people and, you know, work together, come up with good solutions. So thank you very much. And I'll be seeing you probably tomorrow morning whizzing by me.